1. I regret it, but it's true, my first boyfriend was a neckbeard. Let's start with our main players. Me, freshly out the closet, sophomore in high school, average in just about every way, except lightly pudgy and pretty forgiving. AY, the best man for me, self-proclaimed. Short and round, bleached hair with dark roots showing, a chin strap of a neckbeard. I'll give him this, if he didn't have anything else, he had persistence. HH, my best friend, a straight girl with a heart for romance. TD, my other best friend. I'll use they-them pronouns for this story. With that, the story starts about a month before I come out as gay. People knew, but I wouldn't admit it because I live in a very small conservative town, and this was back before marriage was legalized in 2016. That's when AY set his sights on me. One of my friends was friends with one of his friends, so our group started hanging out. That's when I met him. He smelled like he hadn't bathed in 3 weeks, or put on deodorant in ever. I introduced myself politely. Hi, my name is KR, are you AY?
Well, aren't you a cute one? I am AY, I'm glad you know my name.
He gave me a big smile, revealing his disgusting teeth that reaffirmed he hadn't cleaned himself in a while. He lifted my hand from my side and tried to kiss it. I recoiled because WTF do you do in that situation? 2 weeks after our initial meeting, I came out to my friends, and that's the same day he asked me out. The first time.
KR, I've heard you're gay, is that true? Can I finally ask you to be mine? How about a movie date?
I am gay, but I'm not looking for a relationship right now.
But I thought you came out to be with me. Come on, I'm the only other gay person at the school.
That's not true, and KR is way out of your league, says my friend TD. I've never been the biggest of fans of things like leagues as a rating for attractiveness, but TD was right. I was not the best looking guy, but I was average. My one advantage is that I've got big arms. AY, however, was short, round, wore anime shirts that were not long enough, had acne over his entire face, which actually went away after we broke up, because he tried to make me want him back by washing his face and brushing his teeth. Anyway, he huffed and puffed and deflated like a balloon. He slunk away as I thanked TD for being my savior. It wasn't even a week before he tried to ask me out again. I was leaving my art class when he snuck up behind me. I could hear his footsteps and smell him well in advance before he slipped his hands over my eyes. They were greasy and sticky at the same time.
Guess who?
Oh, AY, can you get your hands off my face? I have issues with people touching me. It wasn't a lie, I don't like being touched. My family situation isn't great, and let's just say none of them respect personal space.
Oh, I'm sorry, KR, I just thought it would be something cute we could do together.
Not interested. What brings you to B-Wing? Isn't your next class an E-Wing? The opposite side of the school, with HH?
Yes, but I had to talk to you first. I needed to ask you.
He got on one knee, taking both my hands in his.
Will you go out with me?
He basically screamed that last part. The screeching had attracted gawkers. Now, surrounded by our peers, I looked around. TD and HH were standing near each other. TD looked horrified, and HH looked smitten. I looked down in his hazel eyes, and in the calmest, most polite tone, "No, thank you." I pulled my hands away and walked through the crowd. TD caught up to me because we both had our next class in the same area. We didn't talk about me being asked out or AY at all. The rest of the day, people told me about how he reacted. Some say he cried, others say he screamed. I don't know what's actually true, but I do know one thing: I am not interested. He followed me for a full day. The next day he came and joined my friend group. I slipped out of the group silently and hid in my first period class for a full 30 minutes, avoiding him and texting my friends. Later at lunch, my friends and I were sitting at our usual table, talking about life, when he came over and grabbed the chair from a nearby table and forces it next to me, even though there clearly isn't space, on purpose. When his chair doesn't immediately fit, his response is to slam it in harder, which turns my friend's chair and pushes it out of the way. She never stood a chance. One freshman girl who weighed maybe 90 pounds was no match for a senior neckbeard in love. We all resettled in after that. The conversation flowed along naturally. All of us were used to ignoring him by now. He never added anything meaningful, maybe a sarcastic joke or some edgy emo joke. He was, and to this day, 5 years later, in his emo phase and says "rawr XD" if I ever talk about actually dating him. That's important. Eventually, the conversation turns to boobs. We're a group of high schoolers at a table including 2 gays, a lesbian, a pansexual, 2 bisexuals, and 3 straight people, so we all had different opinions. But what he did next changed the game. He reached his greasy, sticky hand out, placed it on my chest and squeezed. "Honk honk, yeah, I think boobs are pretty great." He had this weird, dreamy look on his face, still groping me. I stood up, grabbed my chair, and walked to the other side. I sat down just outside the circle and stared at him. "Did that really just happen?" said TD.
"Oh, it's so dead," he said, grinning and looking at his hand. "That is one magnificent chest you have, KR.
Touch me again, and I will personally see to it that your death is so slow and horrifically painful, you will beg for the sweet release of death." Like I said, I have issues with being touched. That may seem harsh, but this is incident number 300 of purposeful touching without consent. It really helped that I'm usually bubbly and outgoing, so dropping into a serious tone and dropping my voice 2 octaves made me seem intimidating. Apparently, threatening to straight-up murder him wasn't enough to get him to stay away. But he had a new plan this time. Step 1. Harass HH about how into romance you are, so you can convince her that this is a romantic comedy, and I'm playing hard to get. Step 2. Convince HH to harass me into dating him. Step 3. Convince his friend to join in. Step 4. Step 5. Profit. Unfortunately, it worked. After about a month of everyone telling me I should give him a shot, yeah, he's butt ugly, and his personality is just mimicking my interests or being emo and sarcastic, but deep down he's gay and I'm gay, therefore it's meant to be. So after another couple mini failed attempts, I don't count them because he couldn't ask me before I either said something mean, shouted no, or walked away in the middle of him talking. He made his 3rd attempt. During lunch one day, I separated from my group to use the bathroom, and not only did he follow, he blocked the doorway to ask me out.
"KR, not now, I have to pee!" "Please, give me a chance, I'll give you everything you could ever want."
"If I say yes, will you call off the hit squad and let me use the bathroom?"
"I'd do anything for you, my dear."
That's the story of how he got our first date. We dated for 2 months. 2. I'll start this by introducing myself. My name is Jinx, and I'm non-binary. I'm about 5'8", with a mullet, with black and red hair. I'm 16, going on 17. This took place when I was between 14 and 15. I'm a little chubby, but I hold my weight pretty well. I love things that have to involve horror, and anything that has to do with it. Other people that would be involved in this story. My dear friend Gala. She's one of my closest friends, and I'd do anything for her. She is monster energy loving and a great artist. We've known each other since 6th grade, and we're both juniors now. She's about 5'6" and fairly skinny, but not in a bad way. She has long, beautiful blonde hair that is mid-back length. She's involved in a good amount of this story. Gala's mom. Call her a star, a small but feisty woman. She can be a sweetheart at times, but if you piss her off, she will say something. She's a great cook and an amazing mom who works her ass off. Legbeard. Natalie. A creepypasta that she's obsessed with. She even went by that name all the time. She's morbidly obese, at least 400 pounds. I don't think she knew what a shower or basic hygiene was. The smell would always protrude from her, and made me cringe. She wore the same clothes all the time, a black or white t-shirt, shorts and leggings underneath. She never wore socks with her shoes, so the smell was awful. It made me gag sometimes, it was so bad. We met back in 2018 during the summer. I was 14 and she was 17. Me and Natalie bonded over our love for creepypasta. I still like it to this day. Some of the characters are comfort characters in a way. Anyway, I used to go by Toby back in the day. I identified as male. As of now, I have detransitioned and go by a different name when I first met her. We were actually good friends for a while and did a lot together. We had sleepovers, went to the mall, the roller rink, etc. Me and her were pretty damn close. There was a lot that I put up with, but at the time I just shrugged it off. I didn't know anything about legbeards or neckbeards at the time, so there was a lot of red flags that I missed. For a while everything was fine, but then she started doing some questionable things. She began to text or call me out of the blue, complaining about how her depression was getting out of hand. I myself suffer from MDD and PTSD, so I did my best to sympathize with her, knowing how hard it could be. Looking back on it, I realized it was all BS and she did a lot of what she did for attention. Which to me now is upsetting, because she was almost an adult and I was still 14. There was an incident on my birthday. My birthday is in December. I turned 15. I had a really bad birthday with some things going on with family. That's another story for another time, so it wasn't a good night. The party was held at the skating rink. What can I say? I'd love to roller skate. From about 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. She went to the bathroom and scratched her arm and came back out and showed me and my friends with crocodile tears, saying how she self-harmed. Me and my friends were baffled at this, but I did my best to try and calm her down. Honestly, at this point in the day, I was tired and didn't want to deal with her pity party. When the party was over, she put on a show of how her parents were these awful people. They're not bad, just irresponsible when it comes to their kids' actions, and told us that her dad beats her, etc. He didn't, and never laid a hand on her, by the way. No one was able to let her come home with them. So she had to call up her mom. When she was on the phone, it sounded like she told her mom she was going to get a ride home already. Another incident, she came over to stay with me for a few days because apparently some stuff was going on at home. Her dad was on a business trip and her mom was basically a stay-at-home mom. She told me a story of lies, and I bought into it. I felt bad at the time, so I talked to my mom and she said it was fine. It was an awful experience, mainly because she didn't shower at all when she was over. I don't think Natalie even put on deodorant at all. She had changes of clothes, thankfully, but they smelled like mildew and BO. When she finally went home, I had to keep my windows open and light some candles to get the smell out. It was just gross. The incident that crossed the line was when me, Natalie, and Gala went to the mall during spring break in 2019. I was just getting over being sick and felt good enough to go out. Gala messaged me asking if I was free, and she had told Natalie about it. I said sure, and we all went together. From the beginning it was a mess since we had to take the bus there. We got thrown around once or twice. Eventually we made it to the mall, and we were hungry. We hadn't eaten all morning, so we decided to get some food. Afterwards we decided we'd go to Hot Topic. We all brought our own money. Me and Natalie combined our money together. I got a shirt and she got some mystery bags. When we came back out, Gala had asked for her wallet. When she got it back from Natalie, who was holding it in her bags, her face went white. Where's all my money? She had brought about $30 for herself. It's all gone. Guys, what the fuck? I turned to look at Natalie, and she looked red in the face with embarrassment. Well, I borrowed it so I could buy these things for me and Jinx. I thought you brought your own money. Didn't we agree on that? I guess I forgot it at home. Sorry about that. Gala was now really upset. She had given Natalie her wallet to hold since she didn't have any pockets or a bag. I had one, but it was pretty much full and Natalie had offered. Natalie didn't even ask Gala about borrowing her money. Natalie was 18 now, so she could be charged with theft. Gala began crying and was holding on to me for comfort. Natalie, what the hell? Why didn't you just ask her? You stole money from her. That's not okay, Natalie. Well, why don't you just return what you got? You can't return mystery bags. She smiled like she had a good point, but it just pissed me off more. No. I got this with all the money I had. She rolled her eyes and scoffed at me. Gala was still upset. I had some money left, enough for us to get home on the bus, but then Natalie wanted to use it to get food. Neither me or Gala wanted to eat. My dumbass gave her the money for the food and told her to make sure there was enough for a bus home. She said okay in a nasty attitude and walked off. I was still trying to comfort Gala, considering she was upset, and her trust with Natalie had been broken. A few minutes later, Natalie came back with the food and no money. She had gotten a burger, drink, and fries. Natalie, where's the leftover money? I said to get something small so we had money for the bus ride home. She shrugged. Oh well, I wanted this and thought maybe we could get a ride home from your mom. My mom was working and she knew this. My jaw dropped and glared at Natalie. Dude, what the fuck? I almost yelled at her. She seemed to have cowered back while stuffing her face. Gala began to get more upset. She contacted her mom and told her about our situation. Star, Gala's mom, was not happy. She didn't know yet about Natalie stealing from Gala, so she was willing to give us a ride. Gala had spent the night at Natalie's house the night prior, so her things were still over there. We dropped off Natalie and Gala went inside to get her things. When we got to the house, Natalie said that she would pay her back. When Natalie and Gala went inside, I explained the situation to Star, and she looked like she would stab someone. I kid you not, this woman was pissed. What? Are you fucking serious? Go in there and tell her to get her money back now. So when Gala and Natalie came back out, I just kinda went off on Natalie, saying that she needed to pay her back. She said she didn't have the money, which was a lie. She had the money, which she left at home. I was tired of her at this point, and I just went off on her, annoyed and upset. She was crying, but I didn't care. All the weight had been lifted off my shoulders after I did that. I didn't talk to her after that day, and stayed away from her at all costs. I'm in a different city now, so I don't have to worry about seeing her. 3. Boy, do I have a story for all of you. This all took place since I'd say the beginning of March, right before the pandemic got really extreme. We were still wearing the masks, but we were all quarantined at home. Me, being an adult who couldn't really do anything due to the pandemic, was bored off of my mind. So I make a post on Facebook basically asking if any of my friends were selling an Xbox One. I wanted to occupy my time during this corona chaos, and I didn't really have anything to do other than draw or play my PS2, which didn't have as many games, and it just got a bit stale for a while. About 3 days or so pass, and I receive a text message from one of my friends on Facebook, who had found a listing for an Xbox One on the marketplace. Right in town. Normally, I never use Marketplace because I can't stand it and how sketchy it is to me. But I didn't have a lot of money on me, and this deal seemed actually pretty good and affordable. So I hit the guy up and asked when I could send the money and pick up the console. The dude seemed pretty normal really, except for his lack of any photos, and even disguising his name on Facebook to something edgy with a PFP of a satanic symbol on it. Go figure. I just wanted the console though, and I didn't mind picking it up or anything. So a few days pass, and this guy seems to want to talk to me more casually. He tells me, "To be honest, I want to be friends too. I don't just want to be a guy who sells you an Xbox." Well, I'm not a very social person at all, but I thought, okay, sure, whatever then. Whatever works. He added me as a friend, and that was pretty much that during that time. So we set up a plan and time to pick up the console and exchange the money. I get up to his house to pick it up, money in hand and all. Lo and behold, this guy walks out wearing nothing but demon wear, and has a shirt that said, "Hail Satan, motherfucker." So that was a thing. Even his COVID mask had all of the same too when he came out to hand me the console in its box. He apologized for me waiting a bit longer than expected to be able to give it to me, so he gifted me with his old headset he wasn't using anymore. I didn't think anything of it and thanked him for it, because it was still pretty nice of him to do. So time passed, and yes, the Xbox came in pretty flawed. One of the cores shocked me and the controller was broken, but those were replaceable. It only started getting kind of strange how this guy who had now told me that he was 36 years old, I'm 22, it's not illegal or anything, but it's just strange how a 36-year-old would be acting like what's about to come, would begin to slowly start converting our conversations to flat out asking about how the most outlandish nonsense is real. At one point he claimed to me that he saw a real video of Godzilla roaming the earth in China, and he said it was amazing. He believed the Beirut explosions were faked, how he used to work for Anonymous, how he was such a badass he'd knock people out cold, the typical neckbeard gibberish they'd normally chat around to get laid. I just kind of bobble-headed everything he said and let it go. Let the guy be happy. I chatted with him in short sentences, agreeing or sometimes disagreeing, and all that. And the months followed from there. This guy slowly but surely began to send me some really weird shit. This 36-year-old dude would begin telling me stories of how his dick was so massive that his ex actually couldn't handle it. Therefore she left him. He'd brag about it and talk about how he bonded so well with his last ex, and how they both swore they spoke to aliens in their dreams. At that point was when his conversations would turn more sexual in nature. And my God, this guy would never stop talking over me. He would never let me start nor continue a conversation. Never. So I quit talking altogether. He'd tell me he had dreams of me last night, how we kissed and cuddled, and had intercourse in the clouds or something. He'd constantly ask me if I took CBD that night, because he knew that I had severe anxiety, and his weird discussions would make me a bit anxious and weirded out. I was also a lot more talky on CBD, and he knew that as well, and he wanted me to say whatever I could to validate his constant requests as to, "Do you like me?" over and over again. And it truly was constant, it never freaking stopped. I, no joke, friend-zoned this guy 4 different times in the span of 3 months. And it was almost as if he had pretended I never said a word. He'd bring up sex toys and how good he was. It just became repetitive and pretty childish. Around this same exact time, I was having a fallout with a friend. This is something that was completely separate from the situation with the neckbeard, but it did end up being a causing factor to some problems. I began stupidly venting to the guy about some of my issues regarding it, and my insecurities, not all of them, and not all the time either. I didn't want to vent much about my problems to him, but there was a point in time I got so worked up and had nobody to talk to that I didn't really care anymore. I'd just say what was on my mind. I shared some pretty personal things when I was upset, and they were things that hurt me pretty badly back then. I have CPTSD from childhood trauma, thinking that I had an outlet, at least somewhere. About a week into our final conversation, this freaking guy began finally sending me lecture upon lecture about how I'm a complete loser until I choose to win. About how, if you're depressed, go outside and enjoy life and stop crying. I learned to stop venting to him after that. It was a horrible idea in the first place, but I had no other outlet. I stopped communicating with him completely. The messages didn't stop, though. He sent me paragraph upon paragraph as to how precious I was to him. He was putting romantic posts onto my Facebook timeline and trying so hard to get a response out of me. He would ask countless times for my address for a multitude of reasons. When I told him the Xbox started acting up, he desperately asked for my address so he could fix it. Or he just wanted to hang out because we never did. Or he wanted to play the Ouija board with me, etc. And I could tell he'd get frustrated or act offended if I denied him from visiting. He'd act like, "Oh, so you don't trust me then?" That kind of spiel. The guilt-tripping was very prevalent. Finally, just a few nights ago, I saw he made a random post indirectly ranting about me. "Alright, so I'm gonna be unfriending all of the losers on my friends list to clean it up." His paragraph went into detail about every single thing he ever griped about me, in detail, without mentioning my name. He would complain that he had no time to deal with stupid crybabies who do nothing but whine about them being depressed or not having a date. Pretty ironic coming from him. His paragraph also talked about my issues in particular, and basically just outright shitting on them, while saying I'm a complete loser for being upset with my trauma. I saw the post he made, and I was finally done. I unfriended him and blocked him and removed him from my life. At least that's what I tried to do. After I blocked him, I began receiving messages from him on my other social medias, insulting me and degrading me, telling me that I just used and abused people and I'm a fat bitch. I blocked him on all those accounts as well, and I hope that crazy mofo doesn't contact me again. I genuinely hate being female. I'm sorry, but I just do. This kind of stuff never goes away no matter what you do. I just want to enjoy my life being single. That's really it. 4. First, I'll introduce you to our man of the hour, the neckbeard of our story, Perv. Perv is a neckbeard in disguise. He was a skinny 5'7" boy with no facial hair. The rest of our cast is me, my little sister is Ellie. Boyfriend does not deserve a name, and my little brother is Rob. At this time, I was a tiny 15-year-old girl who was currently in love with my first boyfriend. My family had moved to a new house in the same town we had been in for years after losing our house illegally. At this house, my little sister, who is only 2 years younger, had a friend who would walk up our street and pick her up to play tennis at the park uptown. One day when her friend came, she brought her older brother, Perv, to play, and they needed another to make it fair. My little sister Ellie came to me and asked if I would play with Perv and Olivia, the friend's name. Having nothing better to do, I came out to meet Perv as I have met Olivia. He was only a year older than me, we hit it off, and he taught me how to play tennis. After that, all of us began playing tennis every weekend. The weather was nice. We started taking my 5-year-old brother Rob so he could play while we enjoyed our game. One day, Perv came to hang out with me and my boyfriend was over. They met Perv and started acting strange. He was treating my boyfriend as though he was not being nice to me. He started whispering the normal neckbeard things of, "I don't like him, and he's not very nice to you." After Perv got me alone for a minute, he told me he liked me and to leave my boyfriend. I told him I loved my boyfriend, and I thought of him as a friend. After this, he began getting mean with me and even started a fight with my boyfriend. I asked him to leave, and he had a fit and left. The next week, they all came over and had a decent game in our backyard. Olivia and Allie went upstairs to do little sister things, and Perv stayed downstairs with me and Rob. My mom was in her room and was unable to hear us. Perv asked me many times to go hang out in my room, and I declined, wanting to stay in the living room with Rob. He started slowly making me more uncomfortable, with small comments like, "I wonder where your room is, and if you have any dirty underwear laying around." I ignored him and began playing with Rob. Perv looks around and finds my empty hamper. He runs over and picks it up, flips it upside down, and puts it over his head. I watched him do this as he walks closer to me and inhales loudly. I think I can smell your dirty panties." He smiles at me. I cringe and rip my hamper off his head. "Yeah, no, you didn't. Don't do that again." I frowned at him. I walked away with the hamper and bent over. Perv takes his flip phone out and hands it to my brother, and instructs him how to take a picture with it. Then points it at my butt and shows him how to point it under my skirt and take the picture for him, and then tells him to be quick. Rob takes the phone, and no, he did not take the picture. Instead, Rob lightly tugs on my skirt to get my attention. I stand up, and he shows me the phone in camera mode. "Perv told me to take a picture of your butt." Then hands me the phone. I shut the phone and walk it over to Perv. "That was incredibly awful to have my little brother do that for you." I handed it back to him, and he looks down at Rob and says, "You tattled on me?" Rob ran off, and I told Perv it was time to leave. As this was over 10 years ago, I don't understand why, but the next weekend we all went to the park and played a game of tennis. As the sun was close to setting, I decided it was time to walk home. I had a rule. Rob had to be in front of and behind someone, so I walked 10 feet ahead, and Perv walked 10 feet behind me with Rob in between us. 3 minutes into the walk, I hear Rob scream. I turn around and he's on the ground, red in the face, screaming. He points at Perv and cries, "Perv hit me and knocked me over!" I marched over as Perv is loudly yelling he didn't do it. I punched him in his right shoulder and knocked him over. I then went to Rob and scooped him up. In a menacing tone I said, "You ever hit him or my sister again, I'll cripple you. Don't come near us again." Then I walked away, consoling Rob. Perv turned around and walked the long way home. After that, Perv started calling me nasty names in school and started spreading rumors about me. I ignored them, and everyone treated him like the bag of pervy hot air he was. 4 years later, Rob would tell me that Perv did not hit him, but he saw Perv staring at my butt like a creep, and he had enough, so he threw himself on the ground, knowing I'd take his side and get rid of Perv. I hugged him and told him I love him, and it's now my favorite story of a little boy protecting his older sister. Later, Perv would discover he likes men better, and would date a guy he went to school with. Perv, last I saw, looked more like the neckbeard he is now than ever. 5. This is mostly an admission of guilt. Some backstory, so you can hopefully understand where I was mentally at the time. If you've ever seen a hoarder house, that's essentially what I grew up in. No bathroom, no kitchen, no heating, no way to clean my clothes, and sadly no internet. I'm still bitter about how I grew up, but I'm working through it. Which is how I came to analyze myself in this story. I didn't have the actual facial hair at the time. I do now, although I shave it frequently. But I was overweight and probably smelled like my house, which wasn't pleasant, I'd imagine. I didn't openly hate women, but I shared some nice guy ideals at the time. Which I've also looked into those guys, and they're way sadder. I'm definitely neither of these groups, but I can now see how I sort of shared a few sympathies with that train of thought, but for different reasons. That environment is not meant for a child, and only births a bitter and dark mindset. I do in fact blame my mother, for she is the root cause. I'm not going in depth on that here. To clarify, I do not hate her, but I do have a lot of animosity that I wish I did not. Anyway, I was in the 7th grade when I met her. I won't use her name nor mine, and some things will be changed for privacy. Still embarrasses me how I was. We'll simply use the term girl. She moved to our school around this time and admittedly is a very beautiful girl. She seemed very cold, but as I got to know her, she genuinely opened up to me. I didn't see at the time how she liked me, and that eventually didn't, but she still wanted to help. At first we dated, but it ended a week later, as most of those relationships do. In my mind, I felt I was worthless, as this is how many of the past relationships went. Having that kind of mindset, I didn't really move past much of it. I did remain an extremely loyal friend, and she was too. We'd been through a lot together, but I remember just generally reaching out for attention, and hadn't gotten the memo that negative attention isn't good attention. So I'd grab hers, by doing the whole suicide spiel. Now, I had actually taken this swing from the rope a few years prior, and that's a sort of funny story that I'll post elsewhere. Now, as anyone knows, that sort of person becomes very tiring to be around, so, inevitably, when she got tired of my shit, she still stayed, but I also started watching anti-feminist videos at the time, and was really pushy about it. But I remember jamming it down her throat one day when staying with another neckbeard. I was also overly sexual towards her, which is what I'm ashamed about the most. But I remember forcing some links to videos to her, and basically told her she had to watch them and then come argue with me. And of course, she blocked me on everything. At first, I wouldn't leave her alone, even though she had asked me to. In my mind, I felt very betrayed. That she would block me over what, in my mind, was something menial, but she did. Fast forward about 8 months, and my father has taken me from that horrid environment, and into a much better one. She was friends with my best friend, and got my number through him, and rekindled the friendship. Great, I thought, but I still hadn't really gotten out of my ways with her. She was a very intoxicating person to myself at the time, and I remember her talking about her male friends in a sexual way, and that set me off. I remember going on some tirade about how she was a whore and whatnot, and then ultimately nice-guyed my way into oblivion, ending the friendship with some very, very nasty remarks. I would try to contact her, but I don't think there is any way to recover from what I did, and I believe she's definitely better off without me trying to apologize. I have since met my amazing girlfriend, who has made me appreciate life like I never knew before, and have yet to tell her this story. I couldn't keep this in me any longer, and I just had to share it. More of a therapeutic thing for me. To any neckbeard out there, read closely. You can change. Your mindset is the problem, and only you can change that. It may be bad being a virgin, but once you lose it and you think back to what you've done in pursuit of pussy, the guilt will far outweigh how you felt back then. That guilt will be worse than anything a woman could say to you. If there is an empathetic bone in you, you will realize making girls feel that uncomfortable is worse than suffering in silence. There is still hope for you if you haven't left high school yet, and even thereafter. I always thought I was heartless and amoral since I watched gore for fun, and I didn't care about people because I thought no one cared about me. People do, it's just whether you want to see it or not. To any neckbeard who thinks they're alone and no one cares, just wait. Wait for the person all those girls tell you is out there, because she or he is. It's best to suffer in silence and seek help later, than acting out now because you believed you've got nothing after it, and only the present exists to you. I may not have been deep into neckbeard territory, but I was a bad mix of neckbeard, incel, and most of all a nice guy. Nice is the bare minimum, and you have to prove you're worth more than just a nice person. I'm still very depressed about everything, but I've come to realize it's just my brain trying to force me down, and that my mindset has to change in order for me to be happy. Lose that weight, fight your way out, do what you know deep down would make you more confident in yourself, and please, please don't take a swing like me. To the girl, I'm very sorry, and I hope I didn't affect you as negatively, and that you brushed it off. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 55. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. And before I go on, I'd also like to give a special shout out to the author of story number 4, subscriber SweetInsanity. Thank you very much for sending in your story, SweetInsanity. And I totally didn't forget to do this shout out when I originally recorded the outro, and then add it in before I finally put the video together, because I am a professional man. You can't tell, but if you could see me right now, my teeth would totally be doing that sparkly thing. Ting. Anyway, very glad to come across a story like the last one every now and again. I think it's important to remember, as awful as some of these neckbeards are, and oh, they are awful, it kind of gives you a little bit of hope in humanity, a little bit of faith in humanity, to know that every once in a while one of them can pull their head out of the butt and become a better person. Okay, let's see, when's this go up? Ooh, 1st of November, okay. I'm gonna have to start thinking about Christmas soon. Halloween just by. I'll probably actually start buying things in for Christmas, maybe middle of November. Yep, that's probably a good plan. I would like to say thank you very much to everybody who's bought Hellfreezer merchandise in the past few months from the Teespring store. Link in the description. You guys are basically funding my Christmas this year, because I've decided that money from the merchandise sales not going to be for bills. It's not going to be for buying channel equipment. I've got things that are earmarked for that. That's just going to be for treating Hellfreezer, so I'm going to put that towards Christmas this year. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.